Here we go again. First up, a little bit of news. I think we all saw on the news over the last couple of weeks the surge, this artificial surge in the One Nation, in the news articles. All this discussion of, oh wow, One Nation overtaking the Liberal parties and the National Party. They're coming for Labour. They're getting there. They're going to be the official. They're looking like they might be official opposition in some places. So much support. The polling says it all. And then they got absolutely flogged. Absolutely flogged in the South Australian election. What was their number of seats all up? So I've got SA Gov seats, One Nation. Where did they end up in terms of numbers? 4 total seats. So they end up with 4 in the lower house, 3 in the upper house. Absolutely destroyed. Hang on a second. Something's not quite right here. Hang on. Yeah. So problem when you're an old man is you put your phone down and then you forget where you put it, and then you realize it's actually right in front of you on top of something else that's black. So that's fun. Being old as fuck. Right. One Nation. So they got 4/5 of fuck all of the seats, which is quite nice, because 47 seats. Okay, here we go. This is insane though. It's insane that they still ended up with fucking 23% of the first preference voting. Absolutely insane. So who was their second preference then? I'm guessing first preference maybe was One Nation, but they didn't do much of anything. I just don't know who was their second preference, second party preferred. I just don't understand. It's wild. I guess I could dig into it if I really gave that much of a fuck, but it's, to be honest, I don't care. I just don't care about the state stuff too much. But a couple of independents got in. That's interesting. Righto. That's exciting. Let's see where they're at now. So a whole bunch of hype and money coming from Gina Reinhardt was, talking these guys up, getting them feeling like they were big dicks in town. Now the tables are turning in the headlines. So where are we at? One Nation takes a haircut in the polls, but there's no alarm. So this is Financial Review. This looks like a political editor analysis, not even an op-ed, an analysis. An association with Donald Trump and controversy over a now sacked staffer may explain the party's support Stalling. Fantastic. I love a bit of stalling. Anything that can stall the One Nation support is probably good for us. Creek. Okay. Neither Pauline... 2-minute read. Okay, here we go. Neither Pauline Hanson nor Barnaby Joyce has ever taken One Nation's poll surge for granted. It's like the stock market, Hanson confided a month or so ago, when her party's primary vote threatened to hit 30%. It goes up and it goes down. Okay. So insightful. I don't know how political party stuff works. Sometimes numbers go up, sometimes numbers go down. Oh my god. That's pretty good. I mean, she's nailed it, right? That philosophy held on Monday after 2 separate polls showed One Nation had taken a haircut, even if its fall in support was within the margin of error for each poll. In the news poll published in The Australian, the primary votes for Labor and the Coalition remained unchanged at 31% and 21% respectively, while One Nation's fell 2 percentage points to 24%. Okay. In the Resolve Political Monitor, published in 9 newspapers, One Nation's vote fell 2 points, while Labor's rose 3 points to 32. And the Coalition nudged up 1 point. Okay. We're talking like a couple of points here. Nonetheless, it appears One Nation has plateaued, at least for the time being. By December last year, its vote had levelled out at about 18%, which was 3 times what it scored at the May election. But after the December 14 Bondi massacre lit a fuse under immigration concerns, the party's vote shot up by around another 10 points, and it has been there ever since. Joyce, the party's star recruit and future leader, attributed the latest poll numbers to the revelation over the past fortnight about the party continuing to employ as an advisor a convicted rapist, Sean Black. Naughty, Mr. Sean. Convicted rapist. Not even rumours of a rapist. An honest to God, full blown senior convicted. It's taken a bit of a dip, but Sean is no longer with One Nation. The issue has been dealt with, he said. Oh, great vetting there, guys. I mean, surely a police check. At what point does One Nation need to introduce a police check for their candidates? To be a One Nation candidate, you have to supply the 12-month police check. Alright, Liberal leadership aspirant Andrew Hastie would like to think his attempts to link Hanson's unwavering loyalty to US President Donald Trump may also have played a role. Just as an association with Trump dragged down Peter Dutton's vote at the last federal election, the consequences of Trump's war against Iran have rendered him very unpopular in Australia, with almost 2/3 holding him responsible for high fuel prices. Hastie says One Nation has gone from Australia first to MAGA first. Good on you, Hastie. I love a bit of right-on-right violence. Let's get there. It is an issue that the powers that be inside One Nation are aware of. Joyce said that regardless of the reasons for the latest poll results, I don't think any of the major parties should be jumping for joy. Don't get excited because your polls are at 30%, nor think you are out of the woods at 21%, he said. People on the Conservative side are looking for an alternative. Well. It's kind of funny because this whole, not to put too blunt of a point on it, but people voting, I have a sneaky suspicion, people voting to reduce immigration on the back of the Bondi attack probably weren't too upset on the religious political affiliations of the victims, but I guess that's a lot of assumptions being made there. But there is a horseshoe theory with extreme left and extreme right at the moment regarding the Israel question. So that's fun. That's my speculation. What else have we got? The Daily Mail from the UK. Bit of a rag, I think, is the reputation. But what are they saying about Australian politics? Quick read. One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, has suffered a blow, with support for her party dropping from its record high, according to a new poll. The news poll, released on Sunday night, found One Nation's primary vote slipped 3 points since February, dropping from 27% to 24%. So what is this news poll? The latest news poll is the first to be conducted since the impacts of the fuel crisis hit Australia amid concern the Middle East conflict will cause a global economic slowdown. Despite ongoing instability, Labor has managed to hold its ground. Yes, okay. So we just read that. I don't think there's any other insights to be gained here from reading another article that says the same thing. News poll. Australian opinion polling brand. Surely they have a website. Do they have a website? I want to see the website. News poll. Polling brand published by the Australian, administered by Australian polling firm Pixis Polling and Insights. So it's the Australian. So it's a newspaper poll. My God. Let's not do that. Who do you think would make the better Prime Minister? Anthony Albanese, uncommitted, or Angus Taylor? 37% still think Angus Taylor would be the better Prime Minister. That is hardcore committed to, like, hardcore committed to, what would you call it? Hardcore committed to banality and middle of the road performance. Like, my God, fuck me. Unstable stream. Excellent stream. Is this actually unstable? Average stream bitrate too high. Why is my stream bitrate too high? What does that even mean? What does it even mean? Okay. It's about okay, so it's about half and half with satisfied, dissatisfied. I am willing to bet there's 47% of dissatisfied have absolutely no fucking idea what the government actually does. Same with the satisfied, but like, oh my God, who cares? And then there's a whole bunch of headlines coming out from their news poll. Super cool. I feel like that the deputy opposition leader is probably going to make a good run at being the opposition leader soon. Or at least once Angus Taylor gets the shits and can't be bothered doing it anymore. Mediocrity. That's the word. That's what I think about when I think of Angus Taylor. I think of a very mediocre politician. Nothing outstanding about him. He's just sort of very middle of the road. All right. One nation. One nation on top in Queensland. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Although there's all the right-wing dick sucks here. Queensland are loving Chris Foley at the moment. They think he can do no wrong because he hasn't done fucking anything. Or it feels like if he's doing stuff, it's definitely kept very much under wraps. But I generally don't keep abreast of state politics. I'm generally more of a federal kind of guy. Okay. Reserve Bank of Australia. Right. So this, I think the downfall of One Nation was heavily overblown. Like, they were making some of these headlines that were coming out, or at least on Reddit and whatever, were making it sound like, you know, crashing from 30% to 15%, like a halving of the support. But really, to go from 30 to 27 to 24%, I mean, it's still pretty high. Like, it's still way higher than I think is rational or like normal for Australia to have that sort of like populism support. Like, this is, I heard this great phrase, sloppulism, right? One Nation is sloppulism at its best, right? It's all boogeyman, immigrants, fuel scarcity, but then like the world's shittiest, like the most dumbest and ill-conceived solutions to problems. In fact, you know, Elbow said it best. These sloppulists like One Nation, they're great at telling you what's wrong, but they have absolutely no idea or any ability to fix what, you know, provide any solutions. All right, cash rate. Reserve Bank of Australia current cash rate is 4.1%. And inflation, 3.7%. Annual change February month. Now, why are we learning about the Reserve Bank of Australia? Well, as we know, with a fuel crunch comes inflation, and pretty soon, coming May, coming 2:30 p.m. on the 5th of May, everyone's going to be talking about the Reserve Bank of Australia again, and rates going up, and inflation, and blah blah blah, and everyone's going to be talking shit about the economy and the Reserve Bank and inflation. You can just see it coming, right? Like, this isn't unknowable. So I want to know what the Reserve Bank of Australia is, how it operates, how they're calculating stuff. I mean, I've got a reasonable background. I remember seeing, oh God, who was it? It was one of those, oh shit. I swear it was a Labour right Prime Minister that decoupled, that, God, no, that was Commonwealth Bank, made the went public with the Commonwealth Bank. So the Reserve Bank of Australia is something different. Anyway, we're going to learn about it. I know it's an independent body, independent monetary policy body, and they set the cash rate. Okay, so about the RBA, let's go. The Reserve Bank of Australia is Australia's central bank and derives its functions and powers from the Reserve Bank Act 1959. So that's around that same time everyone was floating their currencies, right? Everyone was getting off the gold standard around then and starting to float so that they could do some creative monetary policy. Its duty is to contribute to the stability of the currency, full employment, and the economic prosperity and welfare of the Australian people. It does this by conducting monetary policy to meet an agreed inflation and full employment objectives. So we're looking to keep inflation between 2 and 3%. And its target of between 2 and 3%, or labour market conditions are expected to deviate significantly from those consistent with full employment. So I don't know what the employment, maybe the employment targets are a little bit more wishy-washy. Okay. So focus on achieving sustained full employment, which is the current maximum level of employment that is consistent with low and stable inflation, whatever the fuck that means. So the Monetary Policy Board commits to regularly communicating its assessment of how conditions in the labour markets stand relative to sustained full employment. Okay, cool. So it does this by conducting meet agreed inflation and full employment objectives, working to maintain strong financial system and efficient payments system, and issuing the nation's banknotes. The RBA provides certain banking services as required to the Australian government and its agencies, and to a number of overseas central banks and official institutions. Additionally, it manages Australia's gold and foreign exchange reserves. So, our lovely Governor, Michelle, can probably tell us a bit about that, but I don't care to listen to that because it's just going to be fluff words, really. Our role. Ooh-wee. Okay, the RBA is Australia's central bank. It conducts monetary policy. We know that. We just read that. The role and functions of the RBA are underpinned by various pieces of legislation. That's cool. So we've got the Reserve Bank of Australia Act 1959. Under the Act, the RBA has 3 boards. The Monetary Policy Board, the Payments System Board, and the Governance Board. Each of these boards performs their functions in a manner that achieves the RBA's overarching objective, which is to promote the economic prosperity and welfare of the Australian people, both now and into the future. The functions of the Monetary Policy Board are set out in Section 9B of the Act. They include determining the monetary policy of the RBA in a manner that believes best contributes to both price stability and the maintenance of full employment in Australia. The Statement on the Conduct of Monetary Policy sets out the common understanding of the Board and the governance and the government as to a framework by which the Board can achieve this. Determining the RBA's policy for contributing to the stability of Australia's financial system. Okay. The functions of the Payments System Board are defined in Section 10B1. They include determining the RBA's payments system policy, ensuring the powers of the RBA under the Payments Systems Regulation Act and the payments are exercised in a way that it believes best contributes to 1. Controlling risk in the financial system, 2. Promoting the efficiency of the payments system, and 3. Promoting competition in the market for payment services, consistent with the overall stability of the financial system. C. Ensuring that the RBA's, so this is also part of its function. C. Ensuring that the RBA's functions and powers under Part 7.3 and 7.3b of the Corporations Acts are exercised in a way that, in the Board's opinion, will best contribute to the overall stability of the financial system. Cool. The functions of the Governance Board are defined in Section 10D1. These include A. Overseeing and determining policies for the management and organisational affairs of the RBA, determining the RBA's policies for delivering banking services to the Commonwealth, and issuing, reissuing and cancelling Australian banknotes. C. Determining the RBA's policies for any other matter not covered by the functions of the Monetary Policy Board. Okay. Right, so they've got one group that thinks about the cash rate, stuff like that. Cool stuff. Then you've got another group that thinks about payment systems. So I don't even know what does that mean BPay? And other shit like that? I don't, what the fuck does that mean? Don't understand. But stuff to do with how people pay stuff and corporations. I guess this is sort of making sure that money, like this is, I mean, I guess it's quite critical, right? Because this is how money moves through the system is quite important, because you want to reduce the flow of the friction. You want to reduce the friction of within the flow of money to as low as possible, so that transactions are easy. People can make transactions and blah 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 blah. The more money moves, the more it's worth, right? And then the government's board is just doing, making sure the Reserve Bank is operating properly. Okay. Governance, some accountability. So the governance board is the accountable authority of the RBA under the public governance performance. Okay, who do you report to? The RBA is managed day to day by the governor, Michelle. Saw that governor does this with support of the deputy governor, chief operating officer, and assistant governors. There's an audit and risk committee that looks at auditing and risk and stuff. I guess so it's looking at their reporting against. I'm guessing the acts have various requirements for reporting, and so they're probably making sure they fulfill their obligations according to the act, which is good. There's a number of official duties signed into law. So they've got a secrecy that they do. They've a number of things they must comply with, general duties as officials of the Commonwealth. So that's kind of cool shit that's going on there. Governance, right? Accountability. They've got some accountability to Parliament. So since 1996, the Governor and senior officers have appeared twice yearly before the House of Reps Standing Committee on Economics to report on the conduct of monetary policy. Okay. As you can imagine, it's quite a mature body. So there's a lot of this shit in is about us. There's even an org structure. Very much like a company, right? So I'm guessing a lot of these people have come from professional banking services or have been career economists or bankers in the finance. And there we go. So we've got Michelle, Chief of Staff Sue, we've got a COO Susan, Deputy Governor Andrew. What? I thought assistant. Oh, right. I thought, yeah. It's assistant. So these are helping Michelle day to day. These are like her GMs, I guess. Yeah. That's pretty good though. Nice, like it's very transparent, open, like a real company. Statutory appointments. So these are appointed by the government, I'm guessing. Hmm. Cool. So those are the boards. Let's find out what else is going on. Okay. Statement on the conduct of monetary policy. Whew, that's maybe a bit too dense. We want to read about inflation and how they're doing inflation. So they've got a nice little handy little chart here. Is that working for everyone? Of the inflation rate over since the Reserve Bank basically started. Well, except it was, I guess, 59, right? So 1960. Oof, -1. That's crazy. Okay. So they're aiming for 2 to 3%. It went a little bit fucking wild in 1970s with the, I guess they had the Iran went wild. There was an Iranian war, I guess, during the 70s, right? There was like the oil price spiked massively, inflated the fuck out of everything. So I'm guessing that's like essentially what's going on there. It's come down steadily over until the 90s, the 2000s, and through the 2000s kept it pretty good. We were on track. I just feel like something must have changed here, because housing prices between the year 2000 and 2015, the housing price went through the fucking roof, as did wages, right? Between sort of 2000 and 2010. So people that bought their houses in like 2003, 2000 to 2005, fucking laughing, right? Because they bought a cheap as fuck house, and wages went crazy, and everyone's been managed to pay them all off very easily. But yeah, in the recent years, inflation's been high. I mean, we had the COVID, we had a bunch of quantitative easing during COVID, which is that spike. And now we're spiking again, but I think that's probably because of America dumb stuff. Okay, how do we exit out of here? Exit full screen. Awesome. Stream is healthy, so they say. This is a net good. This will be a ban. Cool. Spam. Love it. Okay, CPI. What is inflation? Thank you, RBA. Inflation is an increase in the level of prices of the goods and services that households typically buy. A powerful lesson from history is that low and stable inflation is a prerequisite for a strong economy and sustained full employment and growth in real wages. How is inflation measured? The most well-known indicator of inflation is the Consumer Price Index. It captures price changes for the goods and services that households typically buy and is calculated independently by the ABS. Wow, so cool. The ABS commenced publishing the CPI on a monthly basis from November 2025, with a back history of data to early 2024. Previously, the CPI was published on a quarterly basis. The quarterly series will continue to be published for some time using the previous quarterly methodology. For more information, please see technical note, the transition to a complete monthly CPI. Where can I find CPI data? So it's got some links to the ABS. We publish graphs and data showing different measures of CPI. Measures of consumer price inflation. Oh my fucking god. Year-ended percentage change. Sick. Actually, fully super sick. Our goal is to keep consumer price inflation between 2 and 3%. The RBA's Monetary Policy Board sets monetary policy such that inflation is expected to return to the midpoint of this target. This is agreed with the Australian Government and recorded in the Statement on the Conduct of Monetary Policy. Keeping inflation within this range helps preserve the purchasing power of money and encourages sustainable economic growth, benefiting the whole community. So if I'm the Reserve Bank of Australia and I see this little uptick, how worried am that that's a trend? I mean, it's a good question. How worried am I that this is a trend? Am I going to increase rates, the cash rate? Okay. How is inflation measured? Yeah. So it is measured as the rate of change of those prices. Yes, we know that. Typically, prices rise over time, but prices can also fall. A situation called deflation. The most well-known indicator of inflation is the CPI, which measures the percentage change in the price of a basket of goods and services consumed by households. In Australia, the CPI is calculated by the ABS and published once a month. To calculate the CPI, the ABS collects prices for thousands of items, which are grouped into 87 categories, or expenditure classes, and 11 groups. Every month, the ABS calculates the price changes of each item from the previous month and aggregates them to work out the inflation rate for the entire CPI basket. Righto. So it's showing there's like how weight is this the weighting? Is this meant to be the weighting? I don't know, or is this how much things have inflated? Anyway, box, calculating inflation and an example. To better understand how inflation is calculated, we can use an example. In this example, we calculate inflation for a basket that has 2 items in it, books and childcare. The formula for calculating inflation for a single item below is price 2 minus price 1 divided by price 1. Simple. The price of a book was $20 in 2016, and that's $20.50 in 2017. That means inflation for that item is 2.5%. And then they've given a calculation there for 4.7% for childcare. To calculate inflation for a basket that includes books and childcare, we need to use the CPI weights that are based on how much households spend on these items. That's good, because households spend more on childcare than books. Childcare has a greater weight in the basket. Assume in this example, childcare accounts for 73% of the basket and books account for the remaining 27%. Using these weights and the change in prices of the items, annual inflation for this basket was 4.1%. So they're literally weighting the percent and then adding them together. Right. How are prices collected? The ABS collects prices from a wide range of sources such as retailers, supermarkets, departments, websites, blah, blah, blah. I want to know. The ABS has access to data that allows it to record prices frequently. For example, scanner data from supermarkets give information about the price and number of items a consumer buys in one transaction. I want to know. This is what I want to know. I want to know if the ABS is measuring shrinkflation. Apparently they do. They're claiming they do. Quality change. This is in 2019. Is there a better link to? Yes, so this is quality change. Okay, so the AI slummery. The AI whatever is telling me that that the ABS is calculating a price rise. It is adjusting CPI based on shrinkflation, and it's using scanner data. Supermarket scanner data. This is process, so it's a quality adjustment. So we're changing the quality of. Is that of the product or quality in terms of CPI? Qualitative change of CPI. What is that? Chung 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 chung. Ah, motherfuckers. This looks like there's a two-way street where if I'm paying the same for my mobile phone, but I'm getting more data, that counts as a change in price, a negative change in price, or a fall in price. That's interesting. Okay. And then they've got a shrinkflation example here as well. Okay, here we go. Shrinkflation. Quality change occurs in both directions. Understandably, there is greater awareness of quality increase, where technological improvement results in a quality adjustment being applied to show a price fall in the CPI. Examples where this occurs include audio-visual equipment and motor vehicles. What is less noticeable are the quality adjustments that are applied to items that have shown a quality decrease. In this case, a price rise is recorded in the CPI. A well-known example of a quality decrease is where the quantity or volume falls, but the price remains the same. This is known as shrinkflation and is particularly prevalent in food items. When the volume falls but the price remains the same, consumers are essentially paying the same price for lower quality. The use of transactions scanner data in the Australian CPI, which provides detailed item information, enables the ABS to identify and adjust for quality change arising from shrinkflation. The following provides a worked example of how shrinkflation is accounted for. So essentially what they're doing is they're taking the price, observed price, and the observed volume, and if the volume changes by 10% year on year or period on period, then they adjust the price up 10%. So if the volume drops 10%, the price is adjusted upwards 10%. So there is a price adjusted movement of 10%. But what's interesting here is that audiovisual equipment and televisions and computers and stuff like that is that if there is an increase in size, screen resolution, computer memory efficiency, processing power, blah blah blah, that can sometimes lead to a decrease in inflation, because they might be, even though their price might go up, the relative change in quality might be significant enough that there's an overall decrease in value or decrease in price. What's this other note here? Product churn is very prevalent for these items, with old models being replaced by new models frequently. Okay. Same again for motor vehicles. Quality adjustments are applied to the reported price of the vehicle, where there have been changes in the characteristics in terms of motoring performance, fuel economy, safety features, or other enhancements. So it's based on a review by a panel of experts. Telecommunications, I think that's an obvious one. I made an example there, right? Like if you go from paying, for example, $40 a month for 30 gigabytes of data, and it goes up to 80 gigabytes, and you're still paying $40 a month, you've effectively had a price decrease. How interesting learning about CPI. Very cool. And now I promised myself that I was going to get grumpy at Sky News, which is review of merchant card payment costs and surcharging. Yes. Okay, so that's the RBA. They're the ones that determine whether you're allowed to put merchant charge on those card tap stuff, merchant fees, like a percentage, right? Hoo boy, what are we going to get grumpy at today from our friends at Sky News? Something short, I'm guessing. Oh, woof. That's good for getting triggered. This lady, I don't know her name, but she fucking triggers the fuck out of me. What else have we got? Lots of good stuff here. Okay, here we go. Capital gains tax changes could disincentivize work effort. Alright. Albanese government prioritising tax cuts they promised at the last election. Gosh, what are we doing? I kind of want to see this. Is this an assessment of Jim Chalmers? What have we got here?
Let's continue to preview the budget now and bring in the chief economist at AMP, Shane Oliver. Shane, great to see you. Let's look at this speech looming on Wednesday. It's a pre-budget announcement, really, in terms of the reform around the NDIS. Given the trajectory of what's become a sort of social policy behemoth in the NDIS, it was inevitable the government had to make changes to make it sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, they know what the changes are, though. You need more people at the commissioner cracking down on the fraud and the abuse. So bringing the spending in line a little bit because, yeah, fuck those guys that are stealing money from us.
it also opens up some structural saves for the budget bottom line, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and I think it's good news that the government is taking this seriously at last. Over the last 4 years, spending on the NDIS has blown out. The government did move a couple of years ago to try and contain that to 8% growth, but that is still clearly too strong. And by the same token, we hear day by day lots of anecdotes of people taking advantage of it and spending which should simply not be occurring.
Interesting. I mean, this guy's bookshelf is quite telling in an unusual way. I mean, lots of biographies here. We've got Coco Chanel. We've got Elvis. A number of Elvis books here. We've got a big Elvis fans on our hand. In fact, that whole bookshelf on the left there looks like it's pretty well devoted to Elvis, which is insane. Eric Idle, so we've got a bit of a Monty Python fan, so definitely a boomer. I mean, obviously he's an old bloke, but very classic boomer. And then who is The Secrets She Keeps? I'm not familiar with that. Who is the author of that one? But Bruni, someone Bruni. Yeah, I mean, interesting. The Alchemist, maybe. Quite the backdrop for your news interview, but sick. Let's go.
Along with various rorts and so on in that area. And so I think it's good to see that the government is focusing on this. It is a key part of the problem. Not only have we seen spending blow out in recent years in Australia, that's government spending overall. The NDIS has been a big part of that. That, as you and I have discussed over the last few months, has been a contributor to Australia's inflation problem long before the war in Iran. And of course, I think it's also a contributor to Australia's poor productivity performance, that we're allocating a lot of resources in this direction, but we're not seeing the productivity benefit from that. So I
mean, he's probably not half wrong in terms of what do we say about productivity here? So there is a whole bunch of government money going into a service industry for assisting disabled people, which is a very noble and worthwhile thing. Like, this is, I mean, the idea of the NDIS is incredibly good in a moral sense, right? This is a good thing that we want to be doing. It's a moral, ought we take care of those who can't take care of themselves? Yes, absolutely, right? This is we should do that because it speaks to our compassion as a people, and I think as Australians, we're not cruel people. We have a sense of mateship and looking out for each other. And I don't think any of us would want to shit all over someone because they were permanently disabled and unable to get the quality of life we feel like everyone deserves. On the other hand, what this guy is saying is technically correct, where this now siphons a large portion of people out of the productive workforce because they're servicing this NDIS, these disabled people. So it's technically not a productive revenue generating activity. It's a support service. It's like a social welfare service.
I think it's good news the government is moving down this path, but they do have to be quite aggressive. And in a big picture sense, what we really need to see is that government spending as a share of the economy winds back towards the average rates that used to prevail prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, I don't mind Shane Oliver's okay so far. I mean, he's the chief economist at AMP, so he's probably got to be fairly reasonable in terms of his commentary. I can't imagine he is going to be too outlandish. What? Anyway.
And that does require quite a big cutback, I think, spread over the next couple of years.
And is there anything in particular that stands out to you as to where they should be looking for those reductions?
Look, I think the NDIS is a big part of it. But of course, I suspect that the announcement on Wednesday will be about further containing the growth rate of NDIS. So spending there will still be growing. We know there's obvious commitments in terms of defence, announcements in the last week or two on that front. So maybe that's not an area to be cut back. Interest rates, the 10-year bond yield in Australia are around 5%. Public debt is still growing, even though we might have a lower budget deficit this year than previously expected. Our public debt is growing again. That means rapid growth in interest expenses. So there's a whole area in the budget where it's a bit hard to actually see real cutbacks. But I suspect that the areas of cutback have to be in areas like the size of the public sector. Generally, I think we probably need to look at welfare more.
I don't think that's going to be possible, cutting back the size of the public sector generally. I get the impression that it's probably fairly optimized at the moment. I don't have this huge sense of over bloating. And I do know NDIS has to increase, particularly at the commissioner's level, right? It's staffing, so I can only I'm expecting the public sector job rate, number of jobs, to increase, not decrease. But I'm guessing they're going to expect, well, I guess they're going to forecast, well, with the increased number of people at the NDIS commission, they're potentially going to save a whole bunch of money because they're going to crack down on the fraudsters. So there's a couple of $1 billion there they can save. And then there's a potential change to the capital gains that they've been flirting with. Defense spending's going to go up. We shouldn't have given America all that fucking money because we're retards. But you can thank our mate ScoMo for that.
Generally, including the NDIS, but not just the NDIS, to make sure that welfare spending is targeted to those who really need it. So that means more means testing as an area to look at. And I guess we also have to see some limit in terms of the amount of money that the government's pumping into projects and serious testing as to, hopefully by the Productivity Commissioner or someone, as to whether that money is well spent. So there's a bunch of areas that need to be cut back on, but I guess I, as an economist, sort of think, well, at a macro level, we really need to be cutting back from around 27% of GDP, and that's federal government spending as a share of the economy, getting that back down to probably just below 25%. And that was where we were for decades in the run-up to the pandemic.
Sounds reasonable. Sounds hard now that you're in it, but I don't think it's unreasonable. Like it sounds like he's obviously been doing this for a while. He's got a very fairly measured view of a rational government spending percentage of GDP.
And your view as an economist and that macroeconomics you're talking about, sometimes it brushes up against the politics, and and not always in a great way, particularly if the government starts forking out more cash to help people with cost of living, with prices soaring at the bowser.
Well, that's right. And that's the big challenge in this budget. Maybe it was a little bit simpler if you go back 2 months ago before the war started. And so I agree with the Treasury. Life has become more complicated with the war in the Middle East. But there's that old saying, never waste a crisis. In Australia, we have shown that when we do have crises, we tend to get our act together. Hopefully the same happens this time around. I'm a little bit concerned that if you go heavily down the cost of living path, at this point, then it will just make the Reserve Bank's job harder. So, yes, I can understand the government's desire to provide some cost of living support, but you've got to be careful here. We are at the fork in the road in terms of the situation in the Middle East. If the Strait does reopen soon, then maybe we don't need a lot of extra government stimulus being pumped into the economy. Obviously, if it doesn't reopen soon and it's touch and go as to which way we go here, then, of course, there's a lot more pressure on to provide more stimulus. So I think at this point in time, the government has to be very cautious about it. But the overarching issue here is the challenge the Reserve Bank faces. It's not just a hit to economic activity, it's also a boost to inflation. And I think it would be very dangerous to go into this with a situation where the Reserve Bank is raising interest rates, possibly in the week before the budget, and then have the government come out with big handouts to households at the time of the budget 1 week later. That would look like a situation where we've got one foot on the accelerator, one on the brake, and it would make economic management a lot harder. So I think...
Yeah, I mean, we read about the inflation over at the RBA. We read about their goals and their policies and what they're trying to do. So it would be like, it would be the government trying to fight the RBA incredibly hard, right? Like it would be... Yeah, I like this measured view from Shane. He's obviously not a partisan hack piece of shit, which is good. I thought I was going to be here getting triggered by Sky News, but we've actually got a real economist talking real shit, which is quite good and giving a fairly measured view. I would like it. I think I agree with him in terms of like, okay, NDIS, it probably needs to be managed slowly. I mean, it's always going to increase. When we were looking at it a few weeks ago, I think we saw it was something like 7% of Australians are permanently disabled. And then the NDIS was only 3% of the national budget. So I would expect that to grow potentially to 5% realistically, to sort of try and close that gap to cover how many disabled people there are. But yeah, we've got to do something about the fraud and the bullshit, because you can't have people like Drew Pavlou and fucking Pete Zaglulius grifting the fuck out of this situation, this unfortunate situation where we've got people stealing a whole bunch of government money, and then they're grifting, they're like turning it into like the biggest GoFundMe fucking bullshit just by taking the government's own statistics and regurgitating it in a video. Just like we said that, I'm pretty glad, here on this channel we got into that. We sort of read a bit about that before good old mate Friendly Geordies reported on it. Late to the party, but that's okay. Friendly Geordies. Jordan Shanks or whatever he is. But, pretty soon it'll be nothing but coattails. Alright, let's see if we can finish off Shane here. 3 minutes.
Any stimulus
and the
in the
government's
budget has to be temporary and very, very targeted to those who really need it, and not excessive. Indeed. Like arguably it was in the past.
The government's arguing, clearly got the options open when it comes to things like capital gains tax changes and so on. Is there a risk here that they don't really generate much revenue? It's not a major reform, and then you dampen supply because the investment's down.
Look, I think there's a lot of risks around what's being talked about, limiting capital gains tax discount or reducing it, limiting the number of properties you can negatively gear, taxes on family trusts. I mean, in some ways, I kind of think that they want to be seen to be doing something to addressing intergenerational equity issues.
Yes.
But my concern would...
So the reality is these things that they're proposing, I don't know, I haven't seen the modelling, but I can't imagine they're going to raise much revenue. Not enough to get us out of the pickle that we're in. But people, I think, will see this as an issue of fairness. You know, like that's, like, don't discount, this is a huge part of the Australian psyche. Like, Australians get real fucking shitty if shit doesn't appear to be fair. You know, like, if man on the street is watching all these rich people get these tax benefits just for being rich, that shit pisses people off, right? In terms of man on the street. Like, this is, and I really don't think changing the discount rate, discount seat capital gains tax rate, it's not going to stop people investing. Let's fucking be real here. Like, it's just not. People who have money are still going to always want to make money, right? You can't stop people from wanting to make money. But yeah, the good thing about it is it's simple. I guess it'll simplify the tax code a little bit, and it'll give people a sense of fairness. And then when you're looking at someone that's wealthy earning money, be like, yes, they earned that fucking money, right? And then hopefully reduces the like this guy said, there's some of this intergenerational friction.
Be that, firstly, yes, you could make the housing affordability issue worse in the longer term because of supply problems that arise from those tax changes. I personally think the capital gains tax discount is a little bit too generous, but if we are going to...
My man, Shane. Who is this Shane guy? He sounds much too reasonable.
Wind it back and maybe wind back negative gearing, we also have to look at broader tax issues in Australia, and that is that the reality is the Australian tax system is already very, very progressive. The stats are something along the lines that the top 10% wage earners or income earners or taxpayers in Australia, they pay about or account for almost 50%, almost half of the total income tax revenue collected by Canberra, which just tells you how progressive the system is.
That's pretty good, hey? Like, that's... Yeah, I don't know how that stacks up against other countries. But intuitively... Hang on. Ah. Yeah, okay. So anything above $137,000. That feels like a lot of people. It's only 10% of individuals. CEO, managing director. That can't be right. Surgeons. Anesthetists. Financial dealers. Internal medicine, psychiatrists, engineers, legal, CEO, financial, judicial and legal professionals. I mean, I guess it's an average, right? Like, the problem is this CEO, managing director average is because every fucking person that's got their own little tiny mum and dad company that they're fucking avoiding tax, using for tax avoidance, calls themselves a fucking CEO or managing director, right? So this is a bit, yeah. You're not listed on the ASX necessarily earning this much. Well, you might, but if you're on the bottom end, but interesting. While top 10% individuals start at roughly 137,000, to be in the top 10% of households requires over 235,000. Okay. Top 10%. That's not too bad. Okay, I'm alright with that.
If you start winding back capital gains tax discount, negative gearing, taxes on trusts and so on, or increasing the tax on trusts, then you're going to make the tax system ever more progressive, which could act as a disincentive to work effort in Australia as our tax
Fuck me. This has never stopped anyone from wanting to work.
System becomes more progressive and far more progressive compared to many other countries. So I think it has to be part of a package. Otherwise, as Bill Kelty has said, I think a couple of months ago now, it will just be tax hikes. So if you're going to do those things in relation to capital gains tax and so on, you have to at the same time lower income tax rates. And you also have to be prepared that this won't necessarily fix up the housing affordability issue in Australia, because the main problem, if we just don't have enough homes in Australia from the number of people in Australia, you need to be looking at levels of immigration. Yep. You need to be making it easier for developers to supply property.
Got to get that construction sector booming again. Chief Economist Shane Oliver from AMP, thanks. Talk to you soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Shane. Wow, super cool. It was interesting. I was like, I did this other thing where I'm like, I have no idea who the Australian political commentators are in Australia these days. But I'm guessing, oh fuck me, right? So I was like, okay, let's go on YouTube. Australian politics. Immediately this Isaac Butterfield person comes up. I've never heard of this person ever in my life. And they've got 2.21 million subscribers. I have no idea who the fuck they are or what they do. Never heard of them. But they've obviously been on YouTube for a long ass time. Like, some of these videos are 8 years old, right? And I was like, because then I thought, okay, the latest videos, they're not getting like crazy numbers. Like, we're looking at, I mean, still fucking good for Australia, right? Not gonna lie. But we've got 200, so 6 months old, it's 40, 135, 33, 273, talking about Charlie Kirk. So talking about America stuff, talking about Gen Z women, talking about woke and Karens. Is this guy, he's got a very much an American styled backdrop. No photos at Uluru, so it sounded like he's having a whinge maybe. So this guy's looking like very right wing. And very, don't know. So, let's get a taste. Just a little taste. What is this?
Politics is a tough game. If it gets too hot for you, get out of the kitchen. That's my attitude, whether you're male or female.
I see a lot of the people who you come up against. Patman, is it? That's
Payman.
Payman. I see even people like Marine Faruqi. They seem to
And Lydia
things.
Thorpe.
Yep,
Yeah.
they get hot under the collar and they just start blaming things that no one's brought up, no one's talking about, and that's their argument. It's a very weak defensive set.
They're very childish, immature, pathetic in their debate and how to deal with me. So just throw the word out there: racist. You know, the three of them. It's pathetic. It really is. And they're supposed to be members of Parliament representing the public out there. I've got no time for any one of them, actually, to tell you the truth. Politics is a tough game. If it gets too hot for you, get out of it.
So he's a bit of a Pauline Hanson dick suck. Very nice. So maybe this is because we've got to, obviously at some point we've got to find targets of choice here. Like, who do we identify that's ideologically opposite to us, so that we can understand their political worldview. 6 years old, AUSPOL explained, but 6 years old, no idea who the fuck this is. 30,000 subscribers. Still doing stuff. How do amendments work? Yeah, so explaining stuff. So this looks like very much an informational place. So this might be someone who likes to explain the function of government. So maybe that's something that we think about here. Just to, in case we want to learn about stuff. And then we've got populism, Australian, then so articles, news articles, Australians, monuments to misinformation. 2,000 subscribers, 91 videos. Oof, this could be another leftist. Let's get a taste.
I'm going to be honest, I am stressed about what's happening in this country. I'm generally a positive person. I'm not all doom and gloom. I believe that things generally go in an upward direction, that we're going to be okay. And I think that's still true because the adults are in charge. That for all of his faults, Albanese and Chalmers and the Labor Party are doing an exceptional job at managing this panic around fuel, and we're seen in a positive light from our international allies, and they are just making this country better. With that said, it is stressful and frustrating to me that every time I hop online, I have to hear people bootlick Pauline Hanson when she has no idea what she's talking about. That the argument that at least she's been consistent means nothing when she has been consistently bad. If someone is consistently lying to me or consistently beating me up, I'm not going to look at that scenario as like, well, you know what? At least it's predictable. I'm going to be like, damn, that sucks, and that person kind of sucks. And it is equally frustrating when I have Angus Taylor, who is desperately trying to keep this Frankenstein's monster coalition party alive that is built on nothing but hope and a dream that maybe they will have any political power in the near future, when the reality is that he does not seem to be a man with a vision, and no one in that party seems to actually have any idea what the Australian people need. It's stressful. It is worrying, and it is frustrating to come online and hear some of the most ridiculous political positions to justify these people's actions. I am a bit brain broken, and it is frustrating me to no end. And you know what? That's okay. And if I start getting a little bit more heated in these videos, you can understand why. There's people out there who want to give me some hope. I'll take it. But I'm going to be honest, I'm frustrated. It is frustrating coming on every day and hearing people defend what I believe should be indefensible. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments. Check out the YouTube. It's been real. I'm going to be honest, I am stressed about what's happening.
This sounds like one of our center-left gods that we've been looking for. Pew! Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I should be talking. Yeah. Interesting. This looks like an interesting person to keep track of, because I also, in terms of understanding who is the enemy, there will need to be coalition members on the centre left or left. Like, I'm looking for people that are keen to observe the the Labor government, and see good things, right? But I'm also not looking for, we don't need. I'm also not sort of thinking about what does a group of, like, anyways, safety in numbers. Let's say, like, you need a force for good, and you need people that are pushing in the same direction to help try and make this country, keep this country on track in terms of its liberal democratic values. Cool. I think I've had enough. Fuck this shit.